Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Akshay Malhotra from the North Midlands Hand Centre, and I shall be talking to you about how I perform a percutaneous scaphoid fixation. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Harris-Paloo, who's very kindly contributed to some of these slides. My indications for the procedure are based on the BSSH scaphoid fracture guidelines, along with the SWIFT trial that was conducted by Joe Dice's group in Leicester. In the acute stage, the scenarios where I would perform percutaneous fixations would be in undisplaced or minimally displaced scaphoid fractures as per patient choice after thorough counselling, and the second one being scaphoid fractures which are displaced more than 2 millimeters and can be reduced closed. If I can't reduce these fractures closed, then I would move across to an open fixation. That decision will be taken on the table. As per the SWIFT trial, in subacute cases, if I'm unable to see any union between the 6-week and the 3-month mark on a CT scan, I would opt or consider a percutaneous fixation if I feel the scaphoid length is still maintained and there are no obvious cysts. To decide between volar and dorsal approaches, I would consider performing a volar percutaneous fixation for the distal 2/3 scaphoid fractures and a dorsal fixation for the proximal 1/3 scaphoid fractures. However, this rule is not gospel, as if there is comminution at the fracture site and my guide wire keeps exiting out through that comminution, then I might change tact and move to a dorsal approach. Knowing instrumentation is key. I tend to use a trocar from a 14 gauge cannula or a bespoke trocar made by a company that accommodates my 1.1 guide wire, which is again going to be double-ended. I use a 3mm screw for the distal 2/3 scaphoid fractures and a 2.2mm screw system for the proximal 1/3 scaphoid fractures. Positioning of the patient is paramount. I tend to sit on the radial side of the hand with assistant on the head end as well. X-ray coming from the foot end of the table, and instrumentation between me and the assistant along with the scrub nurse. I use a rolled up piece of crepe and mark my entry point in the AP plane. I use the trocar to gain entry into the ST volar space and move the trapezium out of the way. I prefer going around the trapezium rather than through the trapezium, as if I need to take the metalwork out, it is an easier tract to regain. I advance the guide wire through the cannula and across the fracture site under X-ray guidance. Multiple views are taken, including an APPA lateral, oblique, and especially a flex pronated view. I then measure and take off around 4 millimeters from it. Usually it'll measure between a 22 and a 26, depending upon the height of the patient. I then pass a screw, which is self-tapping and self-drilling across the fracture site. I might choose to drill the proximal cortex up to the fracture site on certain occasions. I do not use sutures. Moving across to a case involving the proximal pole of the scaphoid. Here we can see a CT scan and X-rays for a young man. I tend to perform this as a mini-open procedure with a rolled up crepe beneath the volar surface of the wrist. Elevate the skin in a chevron manner and open up the 3rd dorsal compartment. Identify EPL, which you can see zoning across onto the left and moving it out of the way, incising the capsule in an L-shaped manner, curetting out the fracture site, identifying the proximal pole of the scaphoid and passing the screw across. So sometimes, depending upon how small the fragment is, I would use a headed screw, which is a non-cannulated screw, but majority of the times, otherwise I would use a cannulated 2.2mm screw system. This is a 2mm headed screw. Main technical points I would emphasize on is using extension and supination as well as traction to achieve reduction of that scaphoid using an IV cannula or a trocar that is manufactured for this specific procedure. Do not be shy of constant screening. Check your reduction of scaphoid. Check the length of screw and the position of the screw. The commonest mistake is the screw being too long. The complications, which have again been identified by the SWIFT trial, were an increased rate of infection, increased nerve-related injuries, as well as CLPS. But more importantly, nearly 50% of the screws inserted percutaneously were prowled by around 1 millimeter or 2. There was an increased rate of reoperations as well. Thank you for your attention. Any questions, please?